My name is Gaynor Hartnell, and I have the pleasure of editing the Good Practice Guide on solar car parks. This guide is the latest in a series of Good Practice Guides produced by the National Solar Centre, and we're putting on this webinar today as part of the dissemination exercise for getting this report out there in front of potential clients and customers. The report is authored by Christopher Jackson, and I have Christopher with me today, and it's sponsored by Lark Energy, the Solar Cloth Company, Flexi Solar and the Renewable Energy Association. And we're very pleased to have partnering organisations involved, APSI Energy, the British Parking Association, the Department of Health, Health Estates Management Facilities Association, Public Power Solutions and the Retail Energy Forum. Now I'm chairing today's webinar, and as well as Christopher Jackson, we will have Ray Noble speaking. Ray is the PV expert for the Renewable Energy Association, and for those of you who don't know him, he's had over 2 decades of work experience in this industry. He used to be director of the building engineering group at Arup and then went on to head up BP Solar. We have Christopher, who I mentioned is the author of the report. He's the designer of many multiple carport systems and director of Flexi Solar, and Wayne Bexton, head of energy projects in the Energy Services Directorate at Nottingham City Council, and Wayne will be able to give us a customer's perspective. We've got a large number of participants in the webinar today. We're very keen to take your questions, and the way that you get your questions across to us is by typing the questions in the chat box and then marking that as send to all. We will read out the question before we give the answer, so I do encourage you to participate in that. After the event, the webinar will be put on the Renewable Energy Association website and the BRE website. So if you have colleagues either at your council, your hospital, supermarket or in the company that haven't managed to register for today, you can send information to them and they can watch the webinar at any time of their choosing. So after this, we will send out to all registrants the link to see the webinar again, and we encourage you to share that. So first of all, we'll go over to Ray, who's going to give us an overview of solar car parking. Ray.
Okay, good morning. Well, I'm speaking to you today from a car park in a service area near Oxford. Beautiful sunshine. It should have a canopy because I'm sweating in the car, but never mind. I think it's worth saying, you know, why are we thinking about car park canopies? You know, the roof of a building is the easiest place to put solar onto, to feed into the building for the user to use that electricity. But of course, not all roofs are appropriate. Sometimes you have problems with roofs whereby they have warranties on their weather tightness, or the client has lots of equipment on the roof, etc. But generally, most people have car parks, and therefore they become the ideal place to put solar and then feed it into the building. So a lot of what's going on at the moment, and one of the reasons why we wrote this document, is the fact that you can use a car park without disturbing the building. You can wire it directly into the building, just like you would from the solar on the roof. And you could do it via a variety of different means, whether the client wants to pay for it himself, whether he wants to do it through a PPA, buying the electricity from the car park canopy, etc. So the market is moving along in terms of solar, in terms of applications for solar, and we see this as being a big area which will be taken up as time goes by. I think the days of the big fields and such like are over, and unless you have a big field very close to a building, then you'll not make it work at this point in time. However, having a car park adjacent to the building is ideal. The reason I put this slide up is that when we started thinking about car parks or canopies over car parks some time ago, it was at the time when electric vehicles were coming onto the scene, very early days of electric vehicles. And a number of ideas were put forward of how you could power electric vehicles direct from the car park canopy. Interesting that most car parking spaces are roughly 4.8 by 2.4, so you have virtually a standard platform in which to base from. If you look at that in terms of energy generated from, say, the area of a parking space, That's roughly about somewhere in the region of 2.3 kilowatts. And the interesting thing when Nissan brought out the Leaf was that we assessed the area of a car park canopy and worked out that that would be the equivalent of about 4,800 miles per year. i.e. if you parked your car under that canopy and plugged it in and purely took electricity from that canopy, it was the equivalent of 4,800 miles of pure clean electricity. So, you know, it was those sort of things that started people thinking about, you know, what's going to happen in the future. Car parks are where you're going to have charging points for electric vehicles, you know, why not make it clean? Some of the car parks have been, they've been started and done. One was at Spinal Injuries Unit in Milton Keynes. Now this was done even before feed-in tariff. This was done as part of a demonstration of using the car park or the canopy in front of a building and having it part of keeping the customer dry while entering the building, etc., and part of the image of the building. So you can use it in a variety of different ways. In that particular case, it was using semi-transparent crystalline technology, so you had a certain amount of daylight passing through and the rest was being absorbed by the cells. It was interesting that Tesla made the statement that sort of rocked the world with regard to electric vehicles and then offering to sell their battery systems or whatever. But also they have soon recognized that likewise, if you're powering your car, you know, you should be powering it from clean electricity and not from electricity from the grid. So again, you know, people are starting to realize this, and as the message gets through, that clean energy becomes a value and it becomes a visible value. There's different ways of handling car parking. You can cover the bays, you can cover the aisles as well. The logic to covering the aisles, and you've got to be careful you don't have high vehicles driving down aisles, but normally in a car park it's there for cars only. If you cover the aisle, of course you cover more area in terms of available area for solar. And if you work that back to the parking space again, where previously it was about 2.3 kilowatts per parking space, that can then increase to up to around 3.8 kilowatts per parking space. So again, depending on what you're wanting to do, you know, do you want to generate maximum energy for use in the building? Do you want to generate maximum energy for putting into electric vehicles or whatever? You know, there's approaches to take. Of course, if you do these things, it's also part of the image of the building. And before, unfortunately, Tesco had their issues with regard to their present goings on, there was to be a demo built of a curved car park, as you see on the screen, connected straight into a Tesco store. The logic being that the electricity would be used direct, but the customers would have a different experience, particularly those that park close to the store, which would be, they would have their electric charging points there, you would be in the dry going into the store and things like this. So again, there's different ways in which you can apply this. And, you know, what I would say is that it's early days, but you've got to think out the box, and what we've tried to do in the document is to write down as much as we can to steer you into what you need to think about, what you need to do, what sort of regulations you need to comply with, etc., etc. So I hope that's been an early introduction into this, and I'm sure that our other speakers will add more detail to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ray. You can get on your way now, and I hope you soon cool down as you drive away from that car park. So, Christopher, let's hear it now from the author of the guide.
Thanks very much to all of you for supporting this guide. Selective Solar ourselves have always been doing interesting things in solar, been around in some form for the last 25 years. We come from an interesting background of canopies and structures, and then moved into solar, which is, as Ray mentioned, part of the unique challenge of solar carports, because you need to bring together a civil engineering knowledge and that knowledge base with the solar industry knowledge base, and hopefully this report is a way of doing that. What I'm going to talk to you about in the next few minutes, I'm going to highlight three parts of the report. Business case formation for solar carports. I'm going to then follow up with just a summary of the technical specifications of carports, and then finish off with the financial model, a useful tool. And then I'm going to go on to give you a quick tour of where to download the report, a quick whiz through some relevant sections, and then I'm going to finish off with actually using the financial model. So let's get started. So in this slide, I mentioned we're talking about the business case formation, and this is really where the solar industry is looking to add value after the reduction in feed-in tariffs. With the reduction in the tariff and the solar revenue stream, the solar industry is looking to something called solar plus, and that's solar plus storage, solar plus electric vehicle charging, or solar plus almost anything that we can use to increase the value proposition of solar. And what I want to highlight in this slide is, by looking at the top line, what I've done is to break out the revenue that one can expect from that 2.3 kilowatt peak of solar capacity above one single car parking bay per year. What does that actually mean in revenue? And it comes out at about £200 per bay per year that the tenant, the landowner, the project developer can expect in revenue from that car parking bay. And what I want to highlight in this slide is, if you compare the solar revenue to the non-solar revenue potential, you start to realize that one of the unique advantages of solar carports is that there's a massive potential on the non-solar side, which now adds value to, or rather replaces what was missing from the reduction in the feed-in tariffs. So just whizzing through that, I'll try and break out the numbers a bit more and give you a bit of detail what that means. So the second line is looking at, if we had an electric vehicle charging point in that bay and we were charging for the electricity used, how much could you expect to make a year? Now, the answer, having spoken to the EV industry, varies a lot, and I've taken a lower conservative figure here. But there's easy potential to charge 400, or there's easy potential for £480 per year per bay. And that really dwarfs the solar revenue. And therefore, we've got into a new situation where we're actually just using the revenue generated from the solar to pay for the construction of the solar carport, which then gives us the ability to add in all these other revenue streams. Now, the next one, the third one, the carbon reduction commitment penalties of £46 per bay per year, that relates to the obligations for larger companies to reduce their carbon outputs. And if they're in a situation of needing to replace non-renewable energy with renewable energy, this gives them an opportunity to save about £46 a year. Another energy or a cost-saving method would be to replace large pylon lighting with lower level under canopy LED lighting, and that would be a cost savings of £18 per year per bay. There's also benefits because you reduce light pollution as well. Advertising is another interesting revenue stream, and there we estimated at £24 per bay per year, having spoken to many of the large out-of-house or out-of-home advertisers. Now, if you start to add these all up on a large supermarket site, a large hospital site, or a large airport site, these are some quite significant revenues that you can be looking to achieve. They're also harder to calculate revenue potentials from increasing brand value, as we have the example of Tesco's wanting the aesthetic of their carport to be consistent with the design of their building, because they want to project their brand into the carport. But that's harder to actually put a number on, and it's really best to speak with the client directly to understand their aspirations. And then there's the exciting example of customer footfall. If electric vehicle chargers, or if electric vehicle owners are attracted to a site because they have free charging, then the retail site landowner can charge higher rents to their tenants. And this is certainly a model that companies such as Tesla are trying to promote with the rollout of their electric vehicle charging units. So that's the business case section, and it's really about exploring the non-solar revenue streams as an addition to the solar revenue streams, and it shows quite a high potential. The next part of the report is really sort of the nitty-gritty technical section, where we've really gone through all the questions that we get from potential customers and clients and tried to answer them all to really help kickstart the industry and allay the concerns, because this is a developing technology. So one of the key concerns to bear in mind is your site selection. If you're lucky enough to have a large portfolio of car parks, choose a cherry pick and choose the most appropriate, and really speak to a solar car parking specialist and look through the portfolio and find sites which fit the criteria of being adjacent to a large energy user with easy access to sites, with good orientation and layout, and easy below ground foundations. And all these details you find in the site selection section of the report. And another interesting technical aspect is the design selection. And you see on the left-hand side of the slide here that we've given a taxonomy of sort of a family tree of different design types. We call them the T-frame on the top left and the V-frame on the top right. And these can be in single or double forms in the middle. And at the bottom, you see the barrel and arch and portal frame types, which you saw an example of in Renewable's example at the Tesco site. We go into detail in the pros and cons, the advantages and disadvantages of these different designs, and we try to give cost estimates between the build cost of the various different designs. This really helps for developers and end users to have an intelligent conversation about what aspirations they have in their carport projects, and we really do suggest that you take a close look at that section. Another important technical aspect are the principal components of a carport. Here we break them down into the PV system, the frame and the structure, and the below ground foundations. And as I mentioned in my introduction, what we're trying to do in this report is really bring together the knowledge of those in civil engineering with those in the PV sector. So we run through the different types of PV technologies that you can use in carports. An interesting example is the possibility of semi-transparent PV panels, essentially monosilicon, which allows a small amount of light through the gaps in the silicon panels. A slight change to a standard PV panel can give you a dramatic improvement in the aesthetic of the carport. It can allow a little bit of daylight to come through, which will give you shading, but it also gives you the sense of being in a forest canopy. So there are little tweaks you can do on the PV system, which can bring massive benefits to the aesthetic of the carport. Next, the structure. As I mentioned, we've looked at the different design types of the V-frames and the T-frames, etc. We've also tried to give cost estimates and look into the advantages and disadvantages there. And finally, foundations. This represents a big variable cost in the carport system, and it's really imperative to understand foundations, and you need to look for someone who can really reduce cost here in a project. It's really the big unknown, and it's often a killer of carport projects. So make sure you take a close look at foundations, understand the different types, and understand the cost implications of what you're choosing there. This all links back into carport site selection, and I can't stress this enough. If you have got a portfolio of sites, understand which are the most amenable to solar carports and concentrate on those. It's probably only around 20% of the sites in your portfolio, but they will work, they will give a good return on investment, and they will be worthwhile developing. So the third point I wanted to bring across was the financial model. The reason why we put a financial model together is because we're trying to make the developer and the client actually use the same model and speak the same language. And we find that that's very important in the whole project development process. So what we have in this financial model is a way of agreeing upon the solar and the non-revenue, the solar and the non-solar revenue streams on a year basis, and clearly putting those and laying them out up between the developer and the customer. To that end, this financial model, which is simply an Excel spreadsheet with a number of formulas, has important financial metrics of internal rate of return, net present value, return on investment, lifetime cost of electricity, the LCOE, and the total lifetime subsidy. So we know that many customers have a specific threshold that they need to demonstrate for internal rate of return, and this is a good way of having that conversation early and making sure that the project, the carport project, really passes that threshold. We'll look at the spreadsheet in a moment in a bit more detail, but I wanted just to mention that it's fully configurable with in-cell descriptions of all the calculations and the methods used. I encourage you to spend an hour or so playing with it and understand where all the formulas come from, because the more you understand it, the more you can tweak it and tailor it to your specific project. And the final note that it has been peer reviewed, by those with financial knowledge and in the banking sector. So essentially it's robust, and it should give you the right answers. So those are the sort of the three parts of the report that I wanted to highlight: the business case, the technical section, and the financial model. I'm now just going to change screen and take you to the BRE National Solar Centre's website, just to show you where you can download the report and where you can find it. I know that the Gainer and the Renewable Energy Association and the BRE have really been publicising this and pushing out the email and the web link, so I shan't give you. But this is where the landing page is. You've got two you've got two things to download. There's the BRE Solar Car Parks Guide at the top, and then there is also just below it the financial model. So I'm just going to open up the Solar Carport Guide and pull out, sort of highlight a few sections on it. I'm going to jump to page 5 just to show you in more detail the table of selection criteria, which is here. And what we've done is to rank about 8 different selection criteria from a high to low, to say what's important and what's less important. And what I mean by selection criteria are things you look for in a carport project. So as I mentioned, the most important is being next to a high energy user, and to also have it's a bit small for me to read myself, but I hope you can manage it. And also another important selection criteria is whether you're doing a surface car park or a multi-storey car park. Here, the best type of car park is large, flat, with long double rows, with minimal complicated layouts. And that's what you should really be searching for in your car parking or in your car park portfolios. And that's a key message to put across there. So the two most important selection criteria is be next to a high energy user, so they can internally consume the power. And secondly, you want a large, flat surface car park with simple layouts. Multi-storey car parks, they're interesting as well. It's more complicated on the design, and with relevant geometries, it doesn't work out that much more expensive, because there's no need to have foundations in a multi-storey car park. You can bolt directly into the structure of the building. So you do actually have a bit of cost saving potential for a multi-storey car park. So don't overlook those if you have a large asset base. I'm now going to skip to page 7 just to give you another or different look on the design types that we mentioned. If you can see here that we have visualizations of the T frames and the V frames and the portal frames, and then a detailed explanation of the different advantages there. And now I'm going to jump to page 13, which is important for, I think, a lot of local authorities which were always concerned about regulations and health and safety. We've got into a lot of detail, looking at all the carport related regulations, the whole PV related regulations. As I mentioned, we broke down the structure into PV, frame and foundations, and we've gone through them one by one, really fishing out all the relevant legislations from UK and Scottish building regulations, British standards, European standards, the IET solar PV standard as well. And it's pretty well covered there, and that should allay any concerns that customers have, but also bring a bit of certainty to the market there. Another important section to highlight for the we also spoke with the British Parking Association, who helped us a lot, and I'll draw your attention there to their Parkmark scheme, where they have a scheme to review safer parking and award the Parkmark to car parks which are essentially safe for people to use. And they gave a lot of guidance about best practice in this area. So if you design a carport system to the technical specifications that we have in this report, then you will likely qualify for the Parkmark. So I know there are a lot of local authorities listening in on this webinar, and I'll draw your attention here to procurement, because with anything new or different, it's always difficult to find a good procurement route. I would draw to your attention 2 avenues that we looked into here. Public power solutions and the refit framework. Both do slightly different things. Public power solutions essentially offer an updatable dynamic framework. I think it's updated every 2 weeks with new companies which are vetted for their on various elements of stability, deliverability, etc. This is an interesting way if you're a local authority and you're locked into a framework which isn't suitable for you, or you want to work with a new company that's doing carports and they're not on your framework. This is a way of quickly having access to them. Just tell them to contact Public Power Solutions and qualify for their framework, and then you'll be able to use them in an OJU compliant way. This will be very useful for innovative companies out there which want to deliver new solutions. Secondly, there's the refit framework, which is a collection of 12 energy service companies, I understand, and essentially they offer a more a wider brief where they go into a council and they look for energy saving measures. I think if you're one of those councils who run a refit project, get in touch with your refit providers and your program delivery unit and ask them the question, have you looked into carports? What is our potential here? And start having that conversation, because not all of these companies will be aware of the latest best practice in solar carports. If they haven't got any good answers, tell them to come and read the report. And finally, I will draw your attention to the case study section. This is a really good section because it looks at a wide range of different carports, both in Europe, in the UK. It looks at multi-storey car parks, it looks at large surface car parks, and it looks at small novel examples with integrated features such as LED lighting in the canopy, EV chargers protected inside the structure, which we've been touching on earlier. It's always nice to have a case study. Lots of people don't want to be first, they want to be second, and they want something that they know that will be delivered on time. So this section should give you a bit of reassurance. So that was a quick whiz through the report. Thanks very much for bearing with me there. I'll now throw you back over to Gaynor.
Thanks very much, Christopher. That was really very comprehensive, and I think you'll all be in no doubt that there's a great deal of information in this report. So, and now you know, and indeed you've been shown exactly where to find it. So thanks. Our final speaker now is Wayne Bexton, and congratulations, Wayne, on being Nottingham City Council being one of the early adopters of this technology. And please share with us some of your experiences of being a customer of solar carports.
Thanks, Gaynor. Can you? Hopefully you can hear me and see the slides now.
Yes, indeed we can.
Brilliant. Okay. Thanks to Ray and Chris. That was great. Some really good detail there. I'm probably going to go a little bit more basic than that actually, but I'm starting with our kind of overarching driver for this, which is the Nottingham Energy Strategy 2010 to 2020, as you can see there. So we are driven within that document and as an authority with environmental factors, but also on a commercial side as well. And I think that's something which a lot of local authorities will be interested in. We're trying to generate a return and support those buildings where we're looking at solar carports, canopies, but also generate a return that can go back into frontline service delivery as well. So we're looking at it across the board, and energy services here in Nottingham are certainly using that as a driver. So the energy strategy, as you can see, it's around generation, efficiency, distribution and supply. Some of that obviously links into what we've done with Robin Hood Energy, which is another matter. But also we are inputting a 3-year review on that document. But that is guiding us as far as commercial PV installs and what we want to achieve. So it's about looking at sites that we have within the city, looking at the potential, looking at those business cases that have been discussed around the savings on site, potential for advertising, potential for EV charging points as well, and we're even looking further at that as well as far as our electric bus fleet as well in the city, and the potential to make the business cases work in more creative ways. So as well as a creative technology, I think it's about being creative with the business cases, particularly with the subsidy situation. So I'm going to try and use pictures to show you what's happening and actually happened in Nottingham and been launched. So this is our Harvey Haddon sports village. It's got a really ingenious solar system installed on its main car park. The system can produce nearly 60,000 kilowatt hour of energy every year. The energy generated by the system is obviously used to power an energy hungry leisure centre, and we're saving a total of 493 emissions per year. So that's again another positive news story from the site. We're one of the first councils to install the solar carports, and Harvey Haddon was certainly our first. And we are looking at the technologies as far as an increased yield going forward. So you can see on the site there, it sits really. I mean, having been out and inspected the site, I think it sits really nicely. Adjacent to what is a modern looking and newly renovated sports village, and the users of the site have been really positive in the feedback, as well as the managers on site as well. And it's one of those locations where we could start to explore advertising and those additional add-ons that again Chris and Ray I think both mentioned. So again, a bit of a close-up view. And again, actually, you can see under the carports, it does offer that kind of different use as well. You know, so rain, as far as stopping the rain, we've got the guttering on the side there, but does sit in this particular location really positively. It could be as well one of the hubs for our electric vehicle charging down the line. And I think we've got another picture of the site as well, which again blends in with with the surroundings and what goes there. Again, linking to that commercial agenda, saving us the money on the site. And then just skipping on to another one of the locations, another leisure centre. So this is the Ken Martin site, installed on a smaller leisure centre and in a more confined location. So once Harvey Haddon was complete, this was kind of a little bit more of an issue from a planning perspective, how the panels and how the structures would fit in, and we had to jump through some hoops as far as planning. But as you can see from that aerial shot, I think that it really does work. And again, both the leisure centre users and the managers there have been really positive, and again, even during the construction period of time, users were quite happy to see what was happening. So the disruption didn't affect them too much as far as the longer term aim and objective for what we're trying to achieve. So for us going forward, and as far as business cases and making a plan for continuing this kind of program of works, it's been really positive to get that kind of feedback and an early consultation with users of the centre, and kind of feedback afterwards as well has been part of what we've tried to build in to make sure we have got that full understanding of how we can smarten up what we do, and working with our delivery partners. We want to make sure that happens. We're also looking at expanding what we do internally, which is going to be some of the further slides as far as delivery. So you can see an underneath view of the carports, vehicles under there, no problem. And I think we've only had one or two vehicles bump into a column, so that's been a success rate so far. But they are becoming more aware, and we have got some bright stickers on there to make sure that doesn't happen. But obviously it is just aimed at those smaller vehicles coming onto site. So aims and objectives then of what we're doing, just skipping on, a 26% reduction of carbon dioxide against 2005 levels, 20% of the city's own energy generated from low or zero carbon sources. And the key for our elected members is those three items really. So it's tackling fuel poverty, generating an income, and the wider commercialism agenda. So when we meet all three, we're on to a winner with any particular project. The tackling fuel poverty, I'll just mention very briefly around some of what we've done as far as domestic PV installs as well, and then it's some of the wider work as well, linking to municipalisation of energy services, which I know has been an APSI energy driver. Its potential for the smart grid and what we do as a smart city, and looking at energy flows and other opportunities, and linking that to the health agenda. And also we've been successful in an ultra low emission city bid, so multi-million-pound bid, bringing income into the city council to push forward the electric vehicle and low emission agenda. And that's going to very much support, again going back to that point around business cases, very much support what we do and how we continue to deliver in the city as far as carports and canopies. Just really quickly on a small scale, you can see domestic wise we've become really proficient in what we've been doing. I think social houses were up to around about 4,000 rooftop PV installs there, and we've been trying to increase the work that our internal DLO does for those. So that's something that we really want to push them into the commercial arena as well, so where we can deliver internally, and that's a task in itself. Obviously with more traditional internal workforces around highways, there's an ongoing program of work, a sustainable program of work. We'd love that to happen on the energy side as well, and that's something we're trying to grow. Obviously with subsidy issues, that's really tricky. And you can see on the right hand side there, I think we're up to now 15 commercial installations incorporating those couple of carports and canopies in there. We want to continue that into this financial year we're just about to enter, and look at where we can make those business cases make sense. And certainly the feedback and support from elected members has been critical in that. Just a quick snap of what we start to do from a domestic perspective. We want to move that onto the commercial side. And then just finally, because I can see we're slightly behind time, just on considerations, really positive from the leisure centre perspective, the users, the management on site, what they're doing as far as the energy saving, and that really kicks into that education tool. So something probably not mentioned is that it really does support both those attending the centre and the centre managers as far as understanding their energy use and what the energy flows are and what's required on site. And for us, that's absolutely critical as an authority, looking at efficiencies and how people operate our buildings and centres. Further opportunities around charging, advertising to make those business cases work. That's something we're really going to be pushing, particularly around some of our bigger developments where we can incorporate solar. So whether that's some of the work around the big centres in the city that we manage and control, and how we could make those hubs for charging, and as I've talked about, electric bus fleet charging locations as well to really offset what energy demands are coming through there. Collaboration, so we really want to move into working with communities and businesses, which we do already, but making some of those models stack up in partnership. And then just finally there, the smart city agenda. So again, there's something obviously around how we put the installations in across the city, how we monitor, manage, and what impacts that can have on the wider smart city agenda as far as monitoring flows and exactly what's happening across the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wayne. That's really helpful. I mean, it brings home to me seeing these photographs just how much you actually experience PV as a member of the public in a way that you don't if the panels are stuck way up on the top of a roof. Now, I'm delighted to see that we've got really a number of questions here. And if we don't get round to getting through all these questions in the time you've got left, we will send any of those unanswered questions along with answers when we send a follow-up email to people after the webinar. So one of the first questions was, do you have an MSC accredited installer in order to install solar panels on carports? Christopher?
So an MCS accredited installer, whatever the requirement is for rooftop installation, it's the same for a solar carport installation. So the feed-in tariff is the same, and then the MCS requirements are the same as well. That's probably the safest answer I can give. If I was a bit more risky, I would say that the larger carport installations don't require MCS because they pass a threshold, which I think the latest is between 30 or 50 kilowatt peak. So if a carport is about 2 kilowatt peak per bay, anything more than 25 spaces, so the examples that you saw in Nottingham, wouldn't require MCS. Great,
thanks for that. We've got a couple of questions relating to the Excel spreadsheet. We didn't have time actually to go through for Christopher to show you the Excel spreadsheet, but we've got a question. I'll take the two together. Does this spreadsheet include maintenance costs, and will we share a template for the business case? Well, of course we do share it, and it is on the website, so download it afterwards. But the O&M cost, Christopher?
This could be a good time to jump into the spreadsheet, if you would. While I answer.
Briefly, very briefly.
And I'll answer the question at the same time. So the maintenance cost is included in the spreadsheet. We've set it at, I think, £1 per kilowatt peak installed, which you can see on the far left. If I scroll along, we have maintenance and operations. It was, yes, at £10 per kilowatt peak installed. So that is the industry standard number. It's cheaper than maintenance on a roof because you're not working at height, which is an important point to make. And while we have the financial model open, I'll just say a quick few words about it. On the top left, you see all the financial metrics that I mentioned: the internal rate of return, the net present value, and the paybacks. All that you can use to form your business cases. Also, in the report, we have section by section the actual revenue streams you can expect per bay per year for the for electric vehicle charging, advertising, and all the other aspects that we've mentioned, such as energy saving from LED. So go to that section in the report, and that should give you all the information you need to write your business case. And then you can use the financial model to plug in your numbers. Anything in blue is our numbers that you input, and anything in white are outputs. And if I hover over one of these red boxes, you'll see that we've been very tedious and given you the definitions for all the different terms, how they're calculated. So it should really be user-friendly, and I really suggest that you use it early in conversations with your customers, so you're both in agreement about where these numbers come from. Thank you.
Thanks, Christopher. Yes, you really do have chapter and verse in this spreadsheet. So going back to the questions, bear with us one moment. Right. Christopher, this one for you. How robust are the pillars, given the risks of cars damaging the supporting structures? And are there specialist insurance packages available? How quick are they to install? 3 questions.
3 questions. So, if I remember, so the first question is robustness. So in the regulation section, we answer this question. It relates to vehicle impacts, and there's a British standard surrounding this. Everyone assumes that no one is going to drive more than 20 miles per hour in a car park, and if they do, they're being reckless. So all structures should be designed to withstand a 20 mile per hour impact from a vehicle. That's certainly the case. The Nottingham structure was designed to do that and more by far, and it's something you should request from the designers. The next 2 questions. Insurance packages. That's an interesting one, and probably sort of something that hasn't really been answered there. As part of the design, we've looked into a bit. Well, this is something that FlexiSolar does. Is to say, well, if it does get hit by a car, how would you come and fix it, and how can we alter the design to make that easy and cheap? And an advantage with these frame structures is that you can repair the structure without much difficulty there, should that happen. But I'm going to have to pass on the. And the final one was?
Oh, how quick are solar carports to install?
So from personal experience, there we're looking at something like a megawatt. 500 spaces would take less than a month. And something you should really look for from the installer is their experience of handling live car parks and how to maintain the car park open as much as possible whilst they work on site. So that's definitely how are they going to manage the site, and how are they going to minimize inconvenience on the site. It should be quick. With clever foundations and a good team, as I said, 500 spaces can be done in less than a month.
Okay, we've got. I'm looking at a questions here that will be asked themselves with the spreadsheet. So I'll go to one that looks to me as if it's a question on orientation, because of course not all car parks are laid out with the car park rows going from east to west, so enabling you to fit a due south-facing panel on there. So, Christopher, can you give us any overview of the orientation question?
Sure. I love this question because we get asked lots. And in the book, we actually looked into what we call a monopitch roof and a duo-pitch roof. So a monopitch roof is just one single pitch facing any direction, and it's like a wing, so essentially a valve. And the take-home message there is, if you have a duo-pitch roof, it doesn't matter what orientation you have. A 360 degrees rotation, it doesn't matter, you still get the same yield. And it is only the monopitch roofs which are dependent upon orientation. So car parks are not laid out with PV in mind when they're designed. So a way around this is use a duo-pitch roof, and therefore the orientation doesn't matter.
Thanks very much. Chris, what's the size of the UK market, would you estimate?
You could, okay, rather than picking out a figure, let's ground this at something. The US market is 100 megawatts per year and growing at a stable rate. I think it's fair to say that if we take the UK to be 10% of the US market, we're looking at easily 10 megawatts per year. But the UK is a new market with a lot of, let's say, built-up potential. I'm speaking to a lot of the big solar developers, and everyone has a closet full of solar carport projects which they've been waiting to develop and looking for a good low-cost solution. So now that the cost is down to below £1 a watt, a lot of these, well, that bottleneck has been removed, and I would expect a bit of a flood. But easily anything north of 10 megawatts a year is quite conservative.
Right, thanks very much. Of course, that's a moving feast, and let's hope that deployment increases significantly. We've got a question here. We haven't covered this, I don't think, so far, about where would inverters be sited, or did we cover that earlier?
No, and that's a great question. I'm sure Renewable, if he were here, could answer that just as well, or in more detail. But I'd say you've got three sizes of inverter. You've got a central inverter, you've got a string inverter, and you've got a on-panel micro inverter. And depending upon which size of inverter you use, really answers the question. If it's a big central one, you need a big building to house it in, and that's not really the case anymore. They're not really applicable to carports, so strike that out. String inverters, you can house them inside the structure in a metal box housing, which fits nicely onto the uprights of the frame, and it's nicely protected. And it's also a good way to include electric vehicle charging points as well, all into the same box. And then the third way would be a micro inverter, which is actually on the panel itself, so you never have the problem of having to have a box for the inverter. So I think it's a choice between a string inverter on the structure or a micro inverter on the panel, and you need to look at what the design requirement is, what are the efficiency gains you get from a micro inverter, if you've got any shading issues, etc., which will really form your decision as to which one you want to use.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And there's quite a lot of detail in the report itself, so you can refer to that afterwards. There's a question here about the average payback period for a 2.3 kilowatt peak solar carport based on current deployments. That's a fairly, could be a fairly tricky question, really. I mean, you may want to answer that very specifically, or just generally, Chris, give a view of where the cost effectiveness of carports, how that compares with commercial roofs at the moment, and when grid parity might be reached, and answer it how you wish.
Well, again, you almost answered that question for me, and gave it a very good structure. I suppose big take-home message is that solar carports have reached parity with many rooftop installations, and that was something that Renewable was stressing or emphasising. If you have any complications with your roof, you're going to exceed £1 per watt. And in that situation, you're essentially at the same cost as a carport system. But with a carport system, you get the additional benefits that we've highlighted. So the payback really all depends upon how your customer views the non-solar revenue stream benefits. I think also the person asking that question probably wants to know, well, if you just looked at the solar revenue, how long would the payback be? Assuming £1 a watt for a large system, so you get the efficiencies and the scale necessary, you're looking at between 8 to 10 years, which is similar to what you'd be expecting from a rooftop at £1 a watt. It's the same financials and it's the same maths there. But as a developer, as someone selling this product, or as an end user client, you should also really be factoring in the other benefits you get from it, and really using the spreadsheet, using the report, and monetizing those, because that can bring paybacks down to ridiculously short periods.
That sounds good. Right. I think we've reached the end of the questions that have been emailed into us now. There was one I can see here. Is there any car park that's too small, such as a car park with only 6 or 8 spaces? I mean, this report mainly covers the kind of slightly larger scale, but on the other hand, we do have a case study in the report, actually by FlexiSolar, do we not? Which is
indeed
in that size.
Yeah. So we looked at this. I think we call it the small corporate market. Anything above 6 spaces is entirely possible, and we're aided because the feed-in tariff at 6 spaces is about 12 kilowatts. Really compensates for the reduced scale, and so I would say anything from 6 spaces above is sensible for carports.
Right, thank you. Question here: how do you install the foundations?
Well, how much do we have to give away here?
Well, we not much, and we have 3 minutes really. So I think
essentially you're looking for there are a bunch of foundation options mentioned in the reports. You've got concrete pads, concrete piles, helical screws, and it's really what the site requires. There's, in our opinion, it's probably better to use helical screws, for example, where possible, because they tend to be cheaper. Not many people have experience with those, but as I said, FlexiSolar it comes from a canopy and structures background, which has been using these for years. And there's an advantage of using helical screws because they can be recycled essentially, and concrete can't. So that would probably affect your site selection, something you want to use. And the advantage is that these types of foundations have they're minimally invasive and can be installed in a matter of minutes, which allows the car parks to stay open in sections throughout the build process, which is a massive advantage.
Yeah, thanks, Krista. Just noticed a very important point here coming from Kevin McIntyre, who's contributed a lot in this report of the Solar Cross Company, just saying, could we clarify that the feed-in tariff isn't guaranteed for any installation? And indeed, this is, of course, now true. The system is now, or the feed-in tariff scheme is now capped each quarter, so it is not guaranteed. We suggest that it's treated as a potential upside, but you should really look to hope that the project, this is certainly true in commercial roofs, that the project would fly without it. Would you have anything to add to that?
I would add to that actually this is where solar carports have an advantage on the large scale, where we're talking about megawatt-sized deployments, because the feed-in tariff at just under 1 megawatt is something like 0.87p. It's almost nothing. And if you just assume it to be 0 and run your financials on the basis of that, you'll find there's not much difference in the financial returns. Rooftop projects can't get to that scale at the moment, so it might be a sweet for solar carports this year.
Yeah, of course you can find out how each sector of the feed-in tariff is progressing towards its caps each quarter, and we will send that link out to you when we send out just the information about where to find this webcast, because I'm sure you'll all be wanting to listen to it again. It's been so good. This brings us to the end now. Thank you so much for participating. It's been a really lively webinar for us on the questions perspective. I don't think I've ever witnessed one where so many have been flowing in. So look out for our email thanking you all and telling you where to reference this in future. Thank you to the presenters, and thank you to the REA for hosting it.